Love is spiritual, not natural. You ever think about that? This is absolutely miraculous. With love, you get the results now. Hi, I'm Dr. Alex Loyd, and welcome to Deep Water. In Deep Water, we're discussing controversial issues, social issues, painful issues, issues that make us feel stuck in our life, issues that we anguish over to try to make the right decision, or maybe the anguish is that I know what the right decision is, but I can't seem to make it. It's deep water. It's challenging. It's hard sometimes. So in those times, what do we do? How do we decide? How are you going to live your life in the deep water parts of your life? And today, we're talking about Black Lives Matter. I would be shocked if anyone who ever sees this doesn't immediately know what I'm talking about when I say those three words, because it's been so huge in the media, especially in the United States, but really all over the world too. So we're going to talk about this today, and I have one request. I bet you've heard 100 different opinions about Black Lives Matter. I bet you haven't heard this one. So if you'll hang with me to the end, I think I'm going to talk about a general solution that maybe you haven't heard before, and I would ask you to consider. All right? I'm going to have a special guest today. I don't typically do this, but I really felt compelled to do that this week. It's one of the best friends I've ever had in my life. I've known him for 40 years. We were on an athletic team together in college and have stayed in touch and stayed good friends ever since. And I believe he is somewhat of an expert on this subject. His name is Jimmy Hampton. Jimmy, come on out. Good to see you, brother.
Good to see you, brother.
Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
All right, have a seat.
All right.
Okay. Well, you ready?
I think I'm ready, man. I think so.
Okay. I'm just going to dive in the deep end. And anything you don't want to talk about or anything that you want to steer the conversation another way, feel free to do that. And ladies and gentlemen, I've been in deep prayer and meditation and research for about a month, knowing that this day was coming, to really try to make sure whatever I have to say is helpful, not harmful, and I pray to God that is the case. So let's start here.
Right.
You hear those three words,
Yep.
Black Lives Matter.
I hear that.
What
often.
does it mean to you?
You know, I'm from what they have said, and I guess a lot of this started because of the incidents with the police.
Right.
And what I'm taking forward, that, you know, is finally brought to head that, you know, the lives for black men, black women, just black Americans, that, you know, our lives do matter. I mean, it is important that we have value, we have, that we bring value to our nation, that we mean something to our nation, and for people to be vocal about that. I'm just thankful that it's finally come to a head, that we can have a discussion like this, to be able to talk about what it's like to be black in America.
Yeah.
I mean, so how do you feel?
Let me ask you a couple questions if I can. And by the way, Jimmy was a major athletic star in high school, running back, right? Mm-hmm. In Kentucky, correct?
Kentucky.
Yeah, so this guy's been a stud in his life. Now, You have to know this. He is way older than me.
That is true.
Way older than me. So, but anyway.
Fair enough.
Okay. I'm just kidding. That's an old joke between us. But let me ask you a couple of serious questions. Growing up to present, have you been discriminated against personally because of the color of your skin?
Simple answer, yeah. It's, growing up, it was, the little small town that I grew up in, it was, and I've been thinking about this too, man. I grew up in a little small town in Kentucky, and like you said, I'm a lot older than you. So I remember as a kid, and this really is going to date me. I remember as a young kid that me and my dad went to a restaurant, which we didn't do a whole lot, but I do remember.
How old would you have been then?
Maybe 6 or 7.
6 or 7.
I
Okay,
was
go
a
ahead.
Young kid, and my dad and I, we had to go to the back of the restaurant.
And how did that feel?
At the time,
Yeah.
I thought it was just the normal way we did it.
Yeah, okay.
I just didn't know. But that was how I kind of grew up. I mean, the things that now that I look back, I'm going, wow, man, it shouldn't have been that way. But it was just, that's just the way that it was back then.
Yeah.
I mean, when I was a kid. And, that same feeling as a black man, and, is something that has, way I was raised, it was just, that's just the way it is. This is just the way that black people live. This is what we have to do. And that mentality just kind of went along with me as I grew, just kind of accepting it.
How do you think it felt to your dad?
Like I said, it was just a normal thing. It was just probably that's the way it is. We didn't know any difference that it should have been different. We just accepted it as it was.
Well, when I grew up, I don't remember that, and I grew up in a small town too, about 5,000 people. And but what I do remember is that there was a road through town, and I was not to go on the other side of that road.
Yeah.
And I didn't know why. And finally, and by the way, I think my parents, as far as white parents middle class parents in America go, were not on the extremely bigoted side. My dad hired black men,
Right.
paid them fair wage. I never heard the N-word in my family. It was forbidden. Some of those things. But I do remember, well, why can't I go on the other side of that road? And I could tell they didn't want to tell me. Well, of course, to a little kid, now I'm really want to know. Yeah, right. And finally they did. And they said, well, that's where most of at that time they said colored people live. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just they live their lives and we live ours. And that's the way my parents explained it. But I got to tell you, Jimmy, it bothered me. Well, as soon as I heard that from my parents, and I think they tried to say it in as nice a way as they could, it hurt me. It bothered me, okay? And I'll never forget one night when I was a little kid, still in footy pajamas, okay? I loved pockets for whatever reason. Still do, okay, obviously. But my mom had sewed a whole bunch of pockets all over my footy pajamas because I love pockets, all right? And one night, I don't know how it happened, but during the middle of the night, I got up and went out of the house and wandered into the colored section of town, okay? And I remember my parents were just so panicked. But anyway, I went up to a door and knocked, and I wasn't afraid. And I remember how kind and loving and caring, and you're okay, you're safe. Let's get you back to your mom and dad. And then when my parents saw that it was a colored person bringing me back home, oh man, there was this look, and I wonder, what's the look for? Well, I mean, I was safe. I felt safe, but they didn't think I was safe. Okay?
Yeah.
And what we know, Jimmy, is that in 1865 in the United States, under President Abraham Lincoln, slavery was abolished. All right? That's 1865. Okay, you got that date?
Got that date.
Well, desegregation did not happen until 1968. So that's more than 100 years after slavery was abolished. And that's that time that both you and I grew up, is slavery was abolished, but segregation was still in effect, and that was the deal that some of you remember, where you can't eat at the same lunch counter, coloreds could not use the same water fountain, the same bathroom,
or eat in the. You had to go in the back of the restaurant.
Had to go in the back, right? And or you had to go in the back of the bus. You couldn't sit in the part of the bus with everybody else. So, you know, that's astounding to me that we're talking about 250 years of slavery, which the first instance of slavery in the United States was in 1619, with 20 Africans who were kidnapped,
brought over,
and sold and brought over to the United States. That's when it started, 1619. So from 1619 to 1865, that's 250 years, there was slavery in America. Okay. So what does that mean? Okay, for 250 years, there's slavery. What does slavery mean? Well, I looked up some statistics, all right? In 1865, under slavery, approximately, get this, 80% of all exports sold by the United States of America for the gross domestic product earnings of the United States, 80% of those were produced by slaves. And at the time, that was about $3 billion a year, but in today's money, it's about $50 billion a year. And so 80% of what America was built on financially came from the slave labor. I mean, that's worth a lot of money. You're talking $50 billion in today's money, and we're talking 250 to 350 years. So what's 50 billion times 200? What's 50 billion times 300? Because what happened after slavery was abolished in 1865 by Abraham Lincoln, many slave owners they didn't say, oh, okay, you're free to go. No. What they did, a lot of them, is would say, okay, you're not slaves anymore, but you are my property, and we own you. And a lot of the southern government states upheld that law and said, okay, yeah, they're not slaves anymore. So even though after slavery had been abolished, there were still millions of slaves that nothing happened for them. It went on just like it had before.
Well, see, I was close to that. And my brothers and I were talking about it just a couple of weeks ago, that I wasn't aware about the ownership and how they talked about that. But when we grew up in this small town, part of early on, and I do remember this, that our dad was a sharecropper.
Yeah.
And I'm finding out more about my dad. My dad was uneducated, and one of the things that they would do with a lot of slaves, they wouldn't get them educated. So he was an uneducated man, but he married my mom, which she had some education. I think her education went to the 8th grade, and she was very bright. Had some cousins that they all grew up working on this one farm. And so basically and what I'm learning is that sharecropping is just I guess a more
Another name.
another name for slavery, because what they would do, they would the blacks that were on there, and I think there were some whites that were probably sharecroppers as well. But for us, from a Black Lives Matters point, from my brother, we were just a generation away
Yeah.
from slavery. We
That's
were
right.
that close, and that mentality that we inherited from from 200 years of being a slaves, and being a psychologist, that when you go through abuse, how it affects
Yeah.
you mentally. And I think we as Black Americans, we have struggled with that abuse and
Yeah.
had to be able to shake that. Haven't been able to shake that for a long time, and we're still struggling with that.
Yeah.
But because I remember as a kid, looking back, and we would work on there, but my dad, they would work, and so the deal with sharecroppers were, they had to pay, even though they had the white owner would allow them to work the farm, but they had to pay for all the material, all the fertilizer. They had to pay for all the seeds and all the labor to plant it, and then because they weren't educated. Because my dad, I'm just finding out from my uncle that before he passed, he was telling me about my dad, that when my uncle would go out there to help him work on the farm, that the white landowners didn't want my uncle out there because he could count.
Yeah.
And my dad couldn't. So he could end up, by the time the year was over, after they deduct everything that they owed,
Yeah.
they owed the landowner more, so it was a vicious cycle.
Yeah, it was a setup.
Yeah, it was a
setup.
setup. They couldn't win, and so we bring that mentality to us. Growing up, when I did, and well, it's okay. This is the way it's supposed to be. This is the way that it's supposed to be. And I didn't know.
And you know what we would call that in psychology? We would call that mind control. We would call that like cult programming. We would call that that's like someone who's kidnapped and you get them back, but they're not the same person when you get them back. I mean, you've got to go through hard deprogramming that isn't always even successful, and that's if they're kidnapped for 3 days. I mean, we're talking 350 years.
Yeah. So that's basically that mentality that we as Black Americans have to struggle with. And I'm just now feeling a little bit better, because I knew when I moved to Nashville, I mean, I still had a little bit of that mentality, and one of the things that helped me was, like you said, I did play sports, and being able to be there, and the camaraderie with my white teammates, and one of my best friends was the white guy, and we hung out, and we were buddies, and color didn't matter.
Yeah.
I mean, so my brothers and all, like, we all kind of grew up that same way because of what our dad and our mom taught us. To respect everyone, to love, no matter what their color is, and we learn how to, I guess, live the life and play the game, I guess, whatever, and not play the game, but I guess just live the life, and as we grew up. But now that we've gotten older, to know, man, it should have been different.
It should, yeah.
And I remember as a kid that I was actually, I guess, a part of the brainwashing, that I was angry at Dr. Martin Luther King when he started, because I thought he was the enemy. Because I'd heard that from...
Why? Why did you think he was the enemy?
Because he was stirring up stuff, causing trouble.
Okay, I got it.
Trouble, and I didn't know...
We're going to get in trouble because of him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I didn't know what he was trying to do, and up until, here lately,
because that got white people mad.
Yeah. And we don't want the white people mad.
Yeah, that's
we
right.
don't want them mad. And he's coming in here and stirring up these white people, and they're gonna be mad at us. And he's just a troublemaker.
Isn't that amazing?
It really was. Gosh. And now I know what they were trying to do. And I see the documentaries now on TV, and I'm going and see what they went through.
Yeah.
For me to have what I have now, and see what they went through man, it breaks my heart.
Let me back up a little
Okay.
bit. Something I should have brought out earlier. So, Black Lives Matter. To you, does that mean that white lives don't matter, that Indian lives don't matter, that Hispanic lives don't matter? That's one of the biggest objections I've heard, mainly by white people,
Right.
to the Black Lives Matter is, well, I agree with that, but also think that, so how, and you shared this with me the other day, and I thought it was beautiful. So what's your take on that?
You know,
You get a drink of my water here.
I think I may have shared with you. I mean, I believe that all lives matter. I mean, it's especially in this day in our political climate, we got. I just don't want the Black Lives Matter. I mean, because I think a lot of people are putting that for the militant and all the rioting and looting and putting that all together. But I think the basis of it that what Black Lives Matter is that guys we wanted the people to see black people as important, and that we mean something, that we have significance, and that's what I think the Black Lives Matters. I'm not into all the militant. I'm not into defunding police.
So violence.
I'm not in. No, I don't think that's not what our ancestors went through. All they went through is for that. I mean, I think we're disgracing the legacy of Dr. King and others that marched in a peaceful way to get us where we can vote today, where we can actually have the right to be able to vote and have the right to be able to speak.
Right.
For the violence and the looting, that hurts me.
Yeah.
But to be able to stand and say Black Lives Matter is to say, guys, we're human. We're just as important as my white brothers, Indian brothers.
And you told me that you and your son went to that march
we
in Nashville.
A peaceful march. I mean, my son is 17, and he wanted to be a part of that.
Cool.
He said, "Dad, would you come and go with me?" I'm going, I've never been to a march, but yes, son, I'll go with you. But the deal was that you can't be hanging with me. Okay, I said, "Okay, son, I'll go. I'll take you. I'll go with you."
You didn't tell me that part.
No, he wouldn't let me hang out with
cool
him.
enough.
Right. So I went and I stood and to be there, and my job was, I didn't tell him this, but my job was just to pray.
Yeah.
And so I was there praying and been able to talk with people as they came by, just for him to be a part of that and for me to be a part of that. There was a peaceful march to being able to have a voice to be able to stay there. And I was very excited to be a part of it and just to see all the people. And so what encouraged me more, I mean, there were more white people down there than they were black. And I'm going, wow, that's encouraging to see.
Yeah.
And I think, just to see that encouraged my heart. But so to answer your question, does Black Lives Matter? Yes, but all lives, we all, and I think that's, if we can get that, to know that a life is important. And I thought about one of
in a few minutes, I'm going to bring in a family analogy.
Okay.
And I'll bring in a little piece of it right now, and that is, if you've got 6-8 people in a family, and one family member is struggling or having a problem with something, or pain or illness or trouble at school or whatever it is, you go help that one. Right? And you don't say, well, wait a minute, this isn't fair to help just him because there's 5 other members of the family. No, you don't do that. You go help the one that needs it, and then after that, if another one needs it, you help them, and if another one needs it, you help them. So the way I see it is Black Lives Matter minus the violence is saying, hey, this is a 350-year problem. Now, up to today,
Right.
it's more than that. It's about 400 years. But this was almost a Holocaust type problem for 350 years in America, and it's time we focus some on these people and help them because we're the reason for their pain.
Right.
So that's kind of how I look at it. Let's take a couple more things. I already shared that 80% of the gross national product of exports for the United States during that time was from slavery. At any given time, basically when slavery got big in America to its end, there were approximately 40 million slaves. At any, this year, 10 years from now, 100 years from now, all the time there were approximately 40 million slaves. But here's the one that I just can't get over, Jimmy. It's estimated that up to 60 million black African American men, women, children were killed or murdered during those 300 years. 60 million. And we talk about the Holocaust, which is what, 6.
Right.
6. And that's like the greatest atrocity there's ever been. This is 60 million. And that's not even, and the research I did is that rape was just an everyday deal. I mean, that was nothing. Rape was way more than 60 million. Torture was way more than 60 million. And I mean, slaves were killed for breaking a dish. Slaves were killed for a sheep accidentally getting out of the pen. I mean, just stuff you would not even believe that was so painful for me to, and a lot of that stuff I said, okay, wait a minute, is this just some crazy website, because there's so many of those out there? But no, I researched, and no, others are agreeing, and these are credible people, and this is real. 60 million people, many times that in rape, torture, etc., over about 350 years. And that time when you and I were alive was, as little kids, was just on the edge of the lynchings, the lynchings that were way after slavery was abolished, a lot of them. And I'm not aware of any of those in the town I grew up in, but I bet 50 years before that there was. Or maybe 20 years before that. So anyway, what we're talking about with this issue is, to me, one of the most horrific things that has ever happened in the history of mankind. Not just, oh, well, this is something we should probably see if we can figure out. I mean, those are two different things. And I'm reminded of President Kennedy in one of his most famous speeches where he says, we have so much more in common than not. We all breathe the same air. We all want the best for our children. We're all human beings, okay? So we need to unite, it was his message, and love each other, help each other, support each other, unite as a human people. Right?
Amen.
And my doctorates are in natural medicine and psychology, and I did some research in that too. And one thing that's really interesting to me, Jimmy, is that you and I biologically are probably much more alike than you and some other black men as far as biologics.
Right.
You and me are more alike than you and a black woman.
Right.
I am more like you biologically than a lot of white men we could find. All right?
Right.
And one sweet lady, I love the way she put it. She said, we're all the same inside.
We all
I
have the same parts.
I mean, do you have a liver?
Yeah, got that. Got all that.
You got a brain and a gallbladder, and I mean, inside
We're all the same.
we're the same, and even biologically with the pigmentation difference, you and I are more alike than I would be if you compared my biologics to a lot of white men, and the same would be true with you
Right.
comparing your biologics to a lot of black men. And yet, we're supposed to be these horrible enemies that are terrified of each other and want to kill each other and, all this stuff because there's different pigmentation to our skin. I mean, when you really think about it, it's kind of absurd.
I mean, it is. I mean, just because the pigments.
Yeah, that's it.
I'm supposed to hate you
Yeah,
because of
yeah,
that.
and you know what? Most Italian people have a different pigmentation from white Caucasian American. A lot of Europeans have a different pigmentation. All Asians have a different pigmentation, but that may be another discrimination area too. But among people who there is no discrimination, there's a pigmentation difference. So then you're saying, okay, this much pigmentation difference is okay, but this much pigmentation difference isn't. Oh my goodness! How ridiculous could you ever try to be? Okay, okay, and I really do. I want to bring in a family analogy of this because it's the best one I've been able to think about, and that's what President Kennedy said. Basically, is that we are all the human family. Okay, Martin Luther King, of course. We're all one. We're all more alike than we're different. We should be about love and joy and peace and supporting each other. Gandhi,
Yeah.
who's one of my favorites, said, you know what? In the end, truth and love always wins. It's one of the most famous quotes in history. He said, for a time, it may appear that a dictator or tyrant is winning. But in the entire history of mankind, it's not true. It's never happened one time. The way of truth and love, in the end, has always won. And then Jesus, my favorite,
Amen.
they ask him, hey, what's the most important thing in life? Sometimes he didn't answer them. Or sometimes he was so smart and clever, he would answer something that, like, okay, let him who's without sin cast the first stone. They weren't ready for that one. That's not, So he did that sometimes too. But on this one thing, hey, is there something that's most important? The greatest commandment, whatever. And he said, yes, it is love. And if you have done that, you have done everything. You have kept the whole law. If you do that, and what has happened with blacks, African Americans in America, to me, Jimmy, it's so simple. It's the opposite of love.
Well,
it's selfish. It's selfishness of the worst kind. That I'm going to get what I want to the degree that I will kill, torture, or rape you to do it.
Well, it goes back to what you brought up, the family analogy.
Yeah.
And if I could deal with that,
Yeah.
If we are a family, then as Americans, and I guess, just thinking about that family analogy and Black Lives Matter, if the majority considers me an American, then we're family.
Yeah.
And
That's
so
right.
so I guess what we're trying to do is say, at Black Lives Matter, if I am part of your family, then treat me like family.
That's right.
So
And you know something to me that proves that? Let's say that I'm a bigot and I think you're lower than me and all
Right.
that sort of stuff. But we happen to be in the same place at the same time. We're in an elevator and there's an earthquake. Or we're somewhere and all of a sudden here's aliens.
Right.
I mean, I'm being kind of crazy, but something really bad happens where both of our lives are in immediate danger.
Oh, like the foxhole.
Yeah. So what do? Do I say, oh gosh, this is going to kill me if I don't do this? Do I say, oh, but you can't help me. I'm not going to work with you because you're black. No, there's no way anyone would do that. They would say, okay, let's work together on this so we can get out alive.
Amen. We're here. I mean, just like the foxhole. I mean, when you're in I've heard, because my brothers are in the military, but when you're in the foxhole, pigmentation is not going to matter.
That's right.
When bullets are flying over. And we're in this battle, I mean, to be Americans. And, if we're going to, it's hard for an enemy to come out and destroy us from the outside. If we're going to destroy ourselves from the inside, if we can never learn to love each other, to be together. And so I'm thinking, to go back to this whole first question, Black Lives Matter.
Yeah.
If we are a family, if we are all Americans, then we need to treat each other. It shouldn't. We got to get to the point where it's no longer them and us. It's it's got to be we.
That's right.
We Americans, and we're going to stand together and being able to love. And yes, Black lives matter. Asian lives matter. Even the babies, these unborns, every life matters, because we are Americans, and we're gonna do this. We're gonna be the kind of light that God has blessed this nation.
And that's what the founding fathers did. I mean, all men are created equal. And all men have the right, and women, children, to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I mean, it's right there in that document when America was founded, and when what those men said is, this is what America is going to be about. And we're still hundreds of years from that, not struggling because we don't want to live that. I want it for me, but not for you.
Right, because if we're not considering me as human, so it goes back to, so every human has the pursuit of happiness and all of that, but it's just for me because I'm the majority.
Yeah.
But you minorities, y'all get to tag along and have some of the crumbs. I mean,
yeah.
So.
Okay, let me do a little more on the family analogy.
Okay.
When my wife Hope and I, we have 2 children, had a lot of trouble having children. Hope had several miscarriages, didn't think we were ever going to be able to have kids. We had Harry, and then when we had Harry, we thought we were done, because 7 years go by and nothing, and took us forever to have Harry. So, and that was fine. We were happy with Harry, but then Hope gets pregnant. And with George. Mm-hmm. And the doctor comes in and he says, okay, I've got some news. It looks like George is going to be a Down's baby. Down syndrome. Mm-hmm. Okay. And it's a little bit of shock at first, but then after some prayer, we were really fine with it. I mean, some of the most loving kids we'd ever seen were Down's children. So we were really fine with it. But let's say that George was born and he was perfectly healthy. Let's say that didn't happen. Let's say he was Down's. Okay? Mm-hmm. Well, are we going to operate our family and say, okay, George doesn't get anything that Harry doesn't get, and George doesn't get any special attention that Harry doesn't get, and when George, can't do algebra 2 like Harry can, George, what is the matter with you? Why? I mean, Harry's doing algebra 2. You just are not trying hard enough. You need to try harder. You need to, and when we're out in the backyard playing baseball in the backyard, okay, and Harry is, let's say, not Downs, pretty normal brain functioning
Right.
and all that. And Harry's good at baseball, all right? But George is Downs. So George can't hit it for his life, all right? He loves trying to, but he can't do it. So do we say to George, George, no, you cannot have an at-bat because you're not nearly as good as Harry. We're only going to do it for the people who are really good. And that was one of the things that happened after the desegregation laws. After the desegregation laws were passed in 1968. That's one of the things that happened is that so black people start applying for jobs and they start trying to go to college and they start trying to do all this stuff that maybe most of them throughout their whole family, no one had ever done that. But they try to get in college, but they don't make as good on the test scores as the white people. All right? So what do we say? Okay, you can't go to college because we're not going to give you a white person's place because they scored better on the test scores than you. Well, to me, that's not a fair comparison because you're talking about 350 years of slavery, murder, rape, oppression, no education.
Right.
And you're saying you should be able to do accounting just as well as this white guy whose dad was an accountant, granddad was an accountant, great-granddad was an accountant. Well, that's ridiculous. I mean, it's ridiculous. No, what you do is you say, George, go ahead, take a swing, and let's change it a little. Let's say George is not Downs, he's just not as good an athlete as Harry. All right? So what do we do there? Do we say, George, you don't get an at-bat because Harry's better than you? No. You say, come on, let's give George a chance too. And let's throw him 100 balls instead of 10, and maybe he'll get better. Okay? And you know what? George ends up being a better baseball player than Harry once it's all said and done. All right? But if you have this thing that says only the smartest, most qualified, best test scores, regardless of any other factor, then it's like saying, to me anyway, it's like saying to the kid, no, you don't get to try because you're not as good, even though with a little coaching, they might become an even better accountant than that white accountant.
And I got a perfect analogy, not analogy, but something that would go along that. I think for speaking of that, for opportunities out there, and I think for most Black Americans that want to succeed, a lot of it has to do with exposure, being exposed to the learning of being exposed to things. And I'm thinking for me selfishly, when I came to school, I had the degree in business management. I have a degree in business management, but one of the classes that I took was finance, and we had to read the Wall Street Journal. We had to learn about stocks.
Yeah.
But I was probably the only one in class that had never. I knew nothing.
Yeah.
I mean, I had no exposure to that, and it was by the grace of God that I actually made it through that class. But all these other guys, they're talking about stock investments and
you're like,
it was because I didn't know.
Yeah.
But now that I've been exposed to it, not that I'm a big time stock, but I know a little bit about the market and how to be able to do that. But I just wasn't exposed.
Yeah.
And for me to try to compete, to get an A in that class, and if the professor hadn't, by his grace, probably understood that I didn't know that. I mean, I just.
Yeah.
But I think if we just, like you said, had the opportunity.
Yeah.
But it's going to be a little bit different for me. But if you give me a shot.
Yeah. A fair shot.
Give me a fair shot at it.
Yeah.
Just let me get in the game, Coach.
Yeah.
That's all I need. I just want to play.
Yeah.
I won't be the best at this, but I can grow. And I think we have the ability to do that.
Oh, absolutely. I mean,
and as a family,
and one thing that is so amazing to me is to me, and I'm not saying this for you, but to me, the blacks are superior to the whites. I mean, look at sports. I mean, good cow. I mean,
We can do that.
The blacks dominate sports.
Right.
Look at some of the top Nobel Prize winners and PhDs and so many of them now that are coming up with these out-of-the-box solutions
Right.
that no one else ever came up with are blacks. What is his name? I can't believe I forgot this. One of the premier medical doctors in the world. He ran for president last time with Trump. And he's dyslexic. I'm dyslexic, okay? And he's dyslexic. But he may be the top medical genius in the world. He was the very first doctor ever to successfully separate Siamese twins.
Wow.
And no one had ever done it before. One of them had always died. But because he's dyslexic, he sees in 3 dimensions in a way that other people don't, okay? And so he's been able to do a number of surgical procedures that no one else, black, white, yellow, green, blue, have ever been able to do. And so he was going to do that with the Siamese twins, and they kept asking him, okay, are we ready to do it? And every time, Jimmy, he would say, no, I can't see it yet. And then finally he got to a place over weeks and months of praying, meditating, and he said, I can see it. I know how to do it. And he went into that hospital room, he did the surgery, and for the first time in the history of the world, they both live. And now that is the way you do it. And no one else could figure that out. So one of the things that's ridiculous about all this to me is that for whatever reason, you guys seem to be better at everything than we are.
Well, I won't say everything, but God He has blessed us with the athletic ability.
Yeah.
I mean, we can do that. You can see that in the sports. If there were no black Americans, we wouldn't have an NFL or an NBA. It would
look a lot different.
It'd be different.
We'd be bouncing the ball.
We'd be still doing the 5-pass rule.
Yeah.
Everybody touch the ball before you shoot kind of thing.
Yeah.
But we have been blessed to be able to do that. And with the ability, with the right opportunity, we can do, like this doctor, and I can't think of his name either. But
I can't believe I forgot that. But anyway, back to the family for just a second. So what I'm trying to say is every single person alive, if you're watching this, it's true of you. In your family, if someone needs extra help, they get it.
Right.
Unless you're just cruel, and don't love your kids. If somebody needs special help, you get it. If a kid needs medicine,
right.
The family doesn't say, well, no, you're just going to have to die, because that would take money away from the other kids.
Right.
No, you don't do that. You say, no, we are spending that money that we really don't have for the sake of this one person in the family, even if the rest of the family suffers some because of it. And we do that in businesses. Mm-hmm. You know, if someone's if we're in the same company and we're all working together to produce a product or whatever, and one person's having trouble, let's see if we can fix that. Let's see if we can figure it out, right, so we can produce the products more efficiently and make more money and all that. So we do it in almost every situation in life, but we pull out this one situation, which is racial, mm-hmm, and say, we're not going to do it in that. If they need extra help, they've got to get it on their own. They've got to, we're not helping with that. They've got to, and to me, maybe you could make a case for that if it was totally level playing field and everybody had all the same opportunities, right, and stuff like that. But this is the opposite of that. This is 350 years of rape, murder, torture, no education, and being denied even basic civil rights. And what you said, I'm going to go into a little more, and that's the psychology of that. And you're right. I want to talk about the psychology of it for a minute. When I was about 5 years old, our house burned down. And I will never forget it. I mean, I can remember it today, like it was yesterday. And they got me out of the house. I coughed a little bit. There was some smoke. My bedroom was on the second floor, but everybody got out okay. And then it's like the whole town was standing on the sidewalk watching our house burn, which was sort of surreal. But after that, I had a trauma about, okay, I'm going to bed, but I can't sleep because I'm worried something's going to happen. I'm worried the fire's going to start. I'm worried I'm going to start inhaling smoke. And it took months, if not years, for me to get over that trauma. I remember when my grandfather died, and he died from a car accident, not a normal death. I had nightmares for months about my grandfather dying, okay? When someone goes through a trauma, it changes your psychology. Yeah. It changes how you think. It changes how you feel. It's a trigger. It's a some people call them hot buttons. I got a button about that. Or yeah, you got a button about that, don't you? Yeah, you know, and most of those buttons are traumas. And for many years, I started teaching Jimmy 25 years ago. That traumas are passed down from generation to generation. And a lot of my peers told me, and were very critical of me, saying there is no scientific evidence at all that traumas or even memories are passed down. Well, about 5-6 years ago, here come double-blind studies out for the first time saying, guess what? Trauma memories, and especially trauma memories, are passed down in the sperm, and they're passed down in the RNA. And so when someone has a trauma, that's there forever. The unconscious mind prioritizes that because it was a life or death issue. Okay? So if I have 5 traumas in my life, then I have a harder time living a normal life than if I had 1. If I have 20, I have a harder time than 5, okay? And then when I have children, those trauma memories are passed down to my children, and then their traumas are added on top of those, okay? Well, what do you think the trauma would be watching your father hung and lynched right in front of you? What do you think? And here's what I would ask if you're watching this, okay? And that was a great. The thing that made me think about this for the first time was a really cool movie with Matthew McConaughey and Samuel L. Jackson and Sandra Bullock. And at the conclusion of a court case, a little black girl had been beaten and raped and stuff like that.
To Kill a Mockingbird?
No, it wasn't that.
No.
I think it was called A Time to Kill.
Time to Kill, okay.
But anyway, they were going to turn the kids that did that to her free, all right? And Matthew McConaughey's the lawyer. And at the end of it, he described what had happened to the little girl. He said, I want you to imagine a body, that is soaked with their semen, their urine. They threw full beer cans at her head and body, and her bones are broken. She can never have children, things like that. And you could see in the movie, they were picturing. He told them to close their eyes and imagine it, and they were, but it didn't look like it was affecting them a lot. And then right at the end, he said, "Now, imagine the little girl is white and she's your daughter." And you can just see all of the jurors were like, oh gosh. And they'd never thought of it that way. And I'd like to ask you, if you're watching this, try to imagine your father being hung in front of you, your mother being raped in front of you, your sister being raped, your brother being castrated, your brother being killed because he let the sheep get out of the pen, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then imagine this happening over 350 years, over and over and over and over and over and over and over, in generation after generation after generation, and those trauma memories being passed down, and then the next group of slaves pile all of theirs on top of that, and then it ends up with you,
Dylan,
growing up in Kentucky and feeling like, Martin Luther King, please shut up.
That's right.
You're messing things up, and we're gonna get in trouble, and these white people are gonna get us. And I would say that's the direct result of that generations of trauma being passed down over and over and over and over.
I never thought about it in that depth of detail, but I do feel that, as I said before, that it has something that's been passed down for us to be able to feel that way.
Yeah.
It must have been that trauma, because it has affected us. And now we're seeing the results of generational abuse and whatever is going on when people are revolting or rioting in the streets, because that's the only outlet to... No one's going to understand unless I'm...
Yeah, and let me ask you a question, or maybe you should be asking me this question. But if... Let's say a kid sees his father hung or his mother raped or one of those horrible things. Is it then reprehensible for the person who witnessed that to be angry about it?
No, I mean...
No!
Anger is part...
Oh, gosh! To me, that's getting it backwards.
Yeah,
you don't get mad at the person who's angry. They're the ones that were mistreated. The person who needs to be set right is the perpetrator,
right?
The one who committed the crime. Although it wasn't a crime a lot of the time, right. But it was a crime. It was a crime against humanity, and that's another point I wanted to bring out. If these things happen today, they would be crimes against humanity, which is the most serious crime anyone can ever commit.
Right.
Okay? That's like a Hitler or something. Okay? But so I would really encourage you, especially if you're white and watching this, imagine that happening to your family or your friends. How would you feel? And then imagine what that might do to your family over 6 or 8 generations, with it happening in every single generation.
Yeah, I mean, my brothers and I, we've been angry now that we're old enough to look back and seeing anger. Why would the guy treat our dad that way?
Yeah.
I mean, why would they allow that to happen? But once again, it goes back. That's just the way it was.
Yeah.
And that's the hard part for us to get over.
So to me, like you, I'm against the violence 100%. Right. But the person who's angry, man, I want to embrace them and say, you have every right to be angry. Right. And if I had gone through what you and your family or you and your upbringing, if I had gone through that and were in your situation today, I would probably be angry too. In fact, I might be way angrier than you are.
Well, if you think about this, I mean, I just thought about it when we were talking. Think about this: the Black Americans, in which I'm very thankful that I'm here in America. I'm very thankful to be an American, to be part of the American family, and I'm very grateful for what my ancestors went through on my behalf.
Yeah.
But the Black Americans are the only ones that were forced to come here.
Right. That's right.
Every other immigrant, I mean, they come here because they're, and so, for the Hispanics and others that have come here, Asian Americans, it's not the same experience.
Well,
and it's not the same thing. And so for Black Americans, for us to say it matters is going, yes, talking about the 300 years, we were forced here. We have gone through all of this, and they're still not considering us part of the family, even though the even though the billions of dollars that were made on the backs of my ancestors,
really the foundation of today's American economy.
And we're still
started there.
Still trying to fight for the respect. I guess that's it.
Yeah.
The respect, just because of the pigmentation of my skin, that we would do this, and that trauma of being forced to come here as the only minority group that has been forced to be here.
Yeah.
Maybe, if you're saying we need something, I don't know, a payback or whatever.
Yeah. We'll get to that in a minute. I want to go one other place before. I want to go one other place before that, and that's the police situation. And some of this started with Colin Kaepernick, who I don't know that he had ever envisioned it becoming what it has, but he kneeled at the national anthem instead of stood, and he said it was to I don't remember how he put it, but it was to
I don't remember the whole thing.
Draw attention to a black person being killed by a white policeman in a way that was unfair, not right. Mm-hmm. Okay, and we know that that's happened multiple times since then in places around the country. But this is a real problem. What's your 2 cents on the police situation in regard to the Black Lives Movement and just black men and women and children and families and that situation?
One of the things I thought was really neat, one of the white elders at a little church that I go to, and he asked me, Jimmy, have you talked with your son? And I'm going, well, yes, sir, I have. We talked, and what he meant was, have you had the talk?
Yeah.
And he wasn't talking about the birds and the bees.
The talk.
The talk. And so I'm going, yes, sir, I have. And we've talked to our son about the whole idea of, if you do get pulled over, how to speak, how to be.
Yeah. Wow.
How to address me. You said, as far as holding your hands on the air.
And you had to do that. I mean, no, give me a second. You did that because you had to believe if he doesn't act in a certain way, something bad might happen to him just because of the color of his skin.
Yeah, and
go ahead.
I had to experience it, so I had to do that. And I'm going, yes, sir.
So that's the talk.
So I've had the talk with our son, but I had the personal experience of getting my first DWB.
Is that driving while black?
Yeah, I did.
I didn't know what that meant first.
I just heard that on I guess it was a show called Blackish or something, and I'm going, DWB. I'm going. So I experienced that just a year or so ago. I was coming through a very affluent part of Nashville, headed home. It was a sunny afternoon, man. The sun. And I think, I probably had on my smooth jazz and had the windows down, and I was cruising. And so I was coming through this community, which is a 4-lane road, and it's a big thoroughfare. Everybody goes through there. But it has a history of, being a lot of police there because it is a very affluent community. They have police out there a lot of times.
More money, more police.
Yeah. So I was coming through that community, headed home, and I saw the policeman park maybe a mile or so down the road. I saw him on the right. I saw that. And so, of course, I knew the speed limit was about 40. And so I was right. So seeing the policeman ahead of time would be foolish of me to drive 50 miles an hour. So I was driving the speed limit. I was right along with every other car that was in there. And everybody else was probably white. So, I came there. He was here. And the stoplight was there, so I went past the policeman at the stoplight. When the light turned green, I pull up, and the policeman came, and about 20 feet, pulled me over.
What did he say?
And he was said, "Sir, do you know how fast you're going?" I said, "Well, sir," he pulled me over, and I said, "Well, what's the issue, sir?" And he said, "Well, I need to see your driver's license and registration." I said, "Okay." I did it. This was before a lot of this stuff got blown up. I said, "Well, sir, I am reaching to my glove compartment to get my driver's license registered. If you don't mind, this is what I'm going to do. So I had to do that, and he said, "Yes, sir." He said, "Well, I was clocked you that you were speeding," and I'm going. And this is what I said, and I'm going, "Sir, I understand if you need to give me a ticket, I will accept that, but there is no way that I was speeding.
Yeah,
there's no way, sir. I saw you. I knew better. I'd come through a lot, and I was just hitting home. But I know that. But I just had my radar gun." He said, "I just had it recalibrated." I'm going, "Sir, you may have, but I don't believe it was right. But I know I wasn't speeding. But I'll be glad. I will take your ticket, and I will pay your ticket. But I wasn't speeding, sir, and I know that." So he did. He took my license, went back, and came back, and by the grace of God, he didn't give me a ticket. He said, "You just be careful, sir, as you're driving out here." And I'm going, if he had taken the radar, which he never showed it to me, he just said that he had it recalibrated. Because usually I've gotten a ticket before, which I deserved because I was speeding. And the guy showed me and said, "Well, sir, this is what I clocked you at."
Yeah.
This guy said, you were speeding. You were going 55 miles an hour.
When you weren't.
And when I knew, it's no way because I was coming to the stop sign.
Yeah.
With me going 55 miles an hour in a 40-mile-an-hour zone and at a stop sign.
Yeah.
There's no way. And I explained that to him, sir. And I was very courteous, wasn't trying to be belligerent or anything like that.
Yeah. But someone else who wasn't you, who was also black, might have a little attitude because they know they're not speeding.
Right. And I knew better than that because I knew, and I'm going, "Sir," and I did. I said,
because your dad had to talk with you.
Right. I said, "Sir, I know, and sir, I will take your ticket. I understand you got to give me a ticket. You got to do your job. I understand that, but I know I wasn't speeding."
Yeah. Wow.
And so he didn't give me a ticket.
Good.
But it just to prove me that
I've gotten more than my share of tickets, and I've never had that happen.
Yeah, I mean, so he said, "Well, sir, be careful." I said, "Okay." But that was my first DWB, man.
Okay. So do you see any solution or any action that, as far as the police issue with black Americans?
My job, I got a policeman that lives right next door to me, and which I pray for him. I mean, they got a tough job.
Yeah, they do.
They really. I thank the Lord for those that are out there serving for us because they're meant to protect us, and to watch out for us and to bring. If they weren't there, I can't imagine what our society would be if we didn't have police.
Oh,
it
yeah,
would be
right.
It'd be anarchy.
That's right.
And I guess that's what our society, a lot of people are looking for, and if they got that, it would be a crazy place to live. But
I don't think they would like what they got.
No, I know they won't, man.
Wanted it,
but for our policemen, I think it would have to take some part on as far as black Americans. We got to take some responsibility for this, for some of the incidents, and I think what I went through, if I had gotten belligerent, if I would have been escalated it because, well, man, you just pulled me over because I'm black. You just doing that. And which, I could have said that, and which I believe that was the only reason he pulled me over because that was, based on everything else, he had no reason to pull me over. Or maybe just profiling. But if I had handled it different, it could have been different. So I think for us as black Americans, when the opportunity, if we do get pulled over or whatever, DWB, man. If we can do it. But depends on how we handle it. I mean, how we deal with the situations, and we got to take in consideration these guys are under pressure, and it goes back when they're seeing the worst of humanity on a regular basis.
That's right.
And then for someone, you were asking someone to do something and they're giving you an attitude or maybe reaching in their pocket or something, your natural instinct is to protect yourself.
That's right. And
Man,
Yeah.
it just happens to be a lot of the people that have happened has been black, and I know there's some racist policemen out there. I know that.
Yeah.
And you can't weed those out. But I think, I guess, for us, we just got to make sure that we're vigilant on the respect that we show them out there.
I wanted to address something about that too. First of all, I think there needs to be change. I don't necessarily agree that we need to defund police departments, but I do think there needs to be better training. And one thing, and there's been a lot written about this, I think it's called the Blue Code or something, where many police departments around the country have been found in particular situations to be corrupt. A lot of them having to do with drugs, where the policemen were taking kickbacks and things like that.
Right.
And the Blue Code, as I understand it, is you don't ever rat on another policeman. You don't ever give up another policeman, even almost no matter what they do. That's going against the code. Okay,
Right.
I think that code has to end, and so that one policeman, without fear of recrimination or maybe even death, is willing to say, hey, maybe first go to the guy and say, hey man, that's not cool. You're DWBing. That's not cool. Okay, but then if the guy keeps doing it, that guy needs to feel comfortable. That officer needs to feel comfortable going to a superior and saying, I don't want to be a rat, but he's DWBing. And I've gone to him, I've asked him not to, and that superior has to support that.
Right.
And not hold the code that, no, we're not going to do anything to our fellow policemen. I mean, we've got each other's back no matter what. Well, you don't do that in a family either. I mean, you're going to love them no matter what. But if someone in your family is killing people or stealing or whatever, and you love them, you're going to say, hey, or if they're addicted to drugs, let's help you stop this and start living better, okay? There needs to be some training of we're responsible to America, we're responsible to our superiors, we're responsibility to our community to not be bigoted, to treat everyone the same, and if an officer's not doing that, there has to be a way without fear that officer can report it. And maybe not for the person to be fired, but for them to say, hey, you've been DWBing. What's the deal? Please, let's not do that anymore. We're not here for that, okay?
Right.
And then if they don't get in line, maybe then they're fired, but that sort of thing. But I wanted to talk about profiling for a second,
Okay.
because that's one of the big issues, and you mentioned it too in that traffic stop of yours. The psychology behind that is that we have a thing called the unconscious mind. The definition of the unconscious is you don't know what it is. That's the definition.
Okay.
All right? And the issue with that is that your unconscious has override control 100% of the time of your conscious intention. And here's how it happens here, is a policeman is trained to not be bigoted, to not do DWBs, to not do violence unless it's merited, and all that sort of thing. And maybe that's even their intention. But they go into a place where they, like you said, know, okay, something's weird here. My life may be in danger here, okay? And then they see a shiny flash that looks like it might be a gun, okay?
Right.
Well, it is possible that a person's unconscious mind can override their conscious intention for their own survival instinct, and they react really without even thinking, and it's our survival mechanism.
Right.
They do it before they think, and there are times that could be wrong, okay?
Right.
But a person cannot be always in charge of that mechanism of their brain. If their brain gets information that says to their unconscious
Danger.
mind, you may die in the next 5 seconds if you don't shoot. Sometimes that is very or even impossible to control, even though you're trained not to do it. And that's not an excuse, but I think it's something that needs to be built in to the training. It is okay. You may get in a situation where you think you see a gun and your mind causes you to reach for your gun without even thinking and start to do something. You need to pause when that happens at least a second to ask yourself, is that what's really happening? Is my life really in danger? And I think a lot of times that question is never asked. It's just they get it. They're in a neighborhood and they know that people with this color skin tend to commit a lot of crimes in this neighborhood.
Right.
And that's different. In some neighborhoods, it's black skin.
Right.
In some neighborhoods, it's white skin. In some neighborhoods, it's Hispanic more color skin.
Right.
Okay? But the cops know that. They know, okay, in this area, I've got to watch for this.
Right.
In this area, it's something else. But in this area, I've got to watch for this. So they're there. They know their life could be in danger. They see something that maybe their mind misinterprets.
Hadn't thought about
That was not a gun. It was a pack of cigarettes. But they had already drawn and were shooting before they
Realized
paused
what it
to
was.
make sure it was a gun. And that can be a terrifying thing, because in that 2 or 3 seconds, if it is a gun,
Right.
I might be dead.
Right.
Okay, so I did want to at least bring in that element of the problem, that it may not always be a bigoted or bad cop.
Right.
It may be a mistake.
All right, and I agree with that. And I think if we can know that, and I think if most of the incidents like that are happening with blacks, maybe, and I don't know how to say this, maybe, is that, well, I guess I've said it before. We need to be more aware, based on the pigmentation in our skins, when we come in contact with law enforcement, how we conduct ourselves. We got to go that extra mile.
I just thought of something. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Okay.
But what I was saying before about, those traumas being passed down through those generations, well, those traumas can also be passed down through generations of cops.
Yeah.
Where their dad was killed or their great-grandfather was
someone
shot.
like colored.
Yeah. And so now they think they see something, and it's reaction. So yeah, I think what you're saying is that maybe realizing we have a history with the cops,
Yeah.
we need to take that into consideration too.
That's part of I think that's part of our responsibility, because we seem like we're putting a lot, as we said before, we're putting a lot of pressure on the police when they're in a stressful job.
Right.
So we owe it to ourselves to be more diligent in the way, all right, realize that there is a bias towards us. Okay, I got that. I know that. That's why I have the talk with my son.
Yeah.
All right, son, we know this.
Yeah.
This is what you have to do,
Right.
no matter what. So that's our part. Now, if I'm doing what I have to do, and then if an accident happens, then that's going to be on them.
Right.
Then that person needs to be dealt with. But
Yeah.
for us as Black Americans, Black Lives Matter, we got to do this. Even though we can't change that. I mean, this has been 300 years of history,
Yeah.
and we can't change it overnight.
Yeah.
What we got to do, we got to be able to take responsibility for ourselves as Black. All
Yeah.
right, guys, we know this is there. So if we ever get pulled over, if we ever in an incident where we're with the police, we have to be respectful. I got to be careful.
Yeah.
No matter what. So I think that may not be the best answer, but I think that's
Yeah.
a place to start, man.
And I wanted to add one thing to that, and then we'll kind of move to our last thing that I had to say.
Okay.
I've heard from cops that there are 3 or 4 kinds of people that want to become a cop. Okay?
Okay.
One, it's a family profession. Their dads were cops or military,
Right.
granddads, great-granddads, etc. Number 2, somebody wants to serve. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
They want to be of service. Same reason someone might become a senator or congressman, although I have doubts about a lot of them, that they just want to serve, but I'm sure some of them do.
Right.
Okay. One is that they just need a job, and they think it's something
Right.
they'll be good at, and they have an intention to be good at it. The 4th one is somebody who wants to have authority over another person. Man, if we could find that 4th type in every police force in the United States and say, thank you,
but no
but we'll give you a bonus check and go find something else to do, but we don't need you on this
Right.
police force. If we could find, identify, get rid of those guys and gals, I think that would be a huge step. But because I don't think that's the majority of the cops or military. I think that's a minority, but those are the ones that we're hearing about all the time.
They're the one who gets the press.
Yeah, that's right.
So maybe you psychologists, maybe you can come up with a test. How's that?
I'll get to work on that.
You get to work on
I'll
that
get
and
to
all the
work on
other
that.
things you're doing. Work on that test with the
Yeah.
police to determine
I'll get to work on
that
that.
authority part.
Okay. All right, let's move to my last thing. If
Okay.
you have something else, that's fine. But when I was thinking and praying about doing this, I thought, I really don't want to do it if I don't feel like I have something to add. If I don't have something as an action step, that I'm not saying would be a total solution, but might be a step in that direction. And it really shocked me, Jimmy, what I came up with over about a month period.
Okay.
And it was this. I believe that the biggest problem in this whole thing is that the ancestors of the oppressors are not willing to go through pain in order to make it right for the ancestors of the oppressed. And I think that is at the root of this whole thing. I think if we could get over that, we might be able to do things that we can't imagine would even be possible now. And let me go a little further. I've heard all kinds of suggestions, and as I've been researching this, I've seen all kinds of suggestions. One was every black person that can trace their ancestry back to slavery, the government should just write them a check for $500,000 or $1 million or $100,000 or whatever, just a cash. We know some things can never be made right as far as this equals the worth that was taken away. And this is one of those things. No amount of money will make up for killing someone's father and someone's husband. No amount of money will make up for rape and torture and things like that. But you try to make it right. And going back to the family thing, if you've got two kids, and like I have, and one of them wrongs the other one, steals their toy or steals their candy bar or punches them in the nose or whatever, all right? Well, you try to make it right. Okay, you stole his candy bar. I want you to go buy him a candy bar and give it to him.
Right.
You punched him in the nose. I want you to do his chores for a month. Whatever. And we do that in business too. If someone is part of a company and they're not pulling their load, okay, and it means a harder load for everybody else, well, you know what? We're either going to lower your pay or you need to find another place to work, or there's a compensation.
I got you.
All right? That is at least I am so sorry about this. I know it doesn't make up for it, but I want to do what I can. Okay? That's a demonstration of my heart. And that's what it is to me. And so I found a lot of people suggesting things like that, but then inevitably it would be, but that would bankrupt the country. That'd bankrupt the country. We can't bankrupt the country. Or that would mess up the economy. Or that would mess up the stock market. Or another one was they shouldn't have to pay taxes for 10 years or 20 years or for life or whatever. But no, we couldn't do that. That would mess up the budget. And I really thought and prayed about that a long time, Jimmy. And what I came to is, you know what? That's probably true. It probably would bankrupt the country. It probably would mess up the budget. It probably would cause some really significant pain for especially white America. Okay?
Right.
But you know what? In the long run, that may be the best thing that ever happened in America. Even if it did bankrupt the country. To me, when you try to make a spiritual wrong right, even though it causes you enormous pain to do it, there is always a blessing in that usually really surprises you. And it's like, oh, wow, I wasn't even thinking about, but man, that feels so good now. I'm at peace now. And I think a lot of that would happen in the country. Now, the downside is if the country goes bankrupt, it goes bankrupt for everybody.
Right.
Yeah. So there's less opportunities and all that. And I'm not saying that's what we should do. I'm not saying we should write a check or nobody pays taxes. But what I am saying is I think the problem for the last, what is it? Not from 1968 primarily to now, what is that? 40 years? 50 years. That's 50 years. Yeah. I think the biggest problem for the last 50 years is we're trying to find a solution that's not painful. And not painful especially to white Americans who maybe by and large are ancestors of the oppressors for those 300 years. And Jimmy, I think that is the wrong choice. I think we need to look for a solution that is painful to us. Think about that. How much pain was in that 350 years of slavery?
Oh.
You can't. It's beyond words. You can't even try to describe that, how much pain that was. we're looking for a solution that's not painful.
And
There's not one.
no,
And there shouldn't be one. I believe the solution should be painful. And that's why we missed it.
yeah.
And I don't know what the solution is. But I believe there is a solution that is painful for me and the ancestors of the oppressors, even if my ancestors didn't actively kill anybody or whatever. That's still sort of, white, Caucasian, European American, okay? I think there is a solution that is a painful one that would at least be a step in the direction of saying, here's how much we do value you. We are willing to go through this pain now. Even though I'm not personally the one that did it, I know it happened, and I know it happened with some of my ancestors, and I'm willing to go through that because I value you so much.
And I would appreciate your heart. I think I may have shared that with you before, just to hear that. And I don't know what the solution is.
Yeah.
Like you said, one of the things as you were talking, one of the things I was thinking about, and we've talked about the abuse and all those kind of things, and I thought about the AA and when people have gone through. One of the things they do when people are recovering, they go back. I think they're supposed to, for the people, once they realize what they have done, the alcoholic or the drug,
To make amends.
they go and make amends. They go to the people that they have hurt.
That's right.
Mostly.
That's right.
And make amends and confess that.
Yeah, that's right.
But I don't think our nation has ever done that.
I don't think we have. No, I don't.
And I think that's. I think if we want to talk about Black Lives Matter, I think if someone would say, guys, we know what we did was wrong.
Yeah. Right.
And
Absolutely.
we're sorry for that. You are part of our family.
Yeah.
You are Americans, and I don't know if money is going to be the issue, but if they're going to write me a check, yeah, I'll take it. But it's not, I don't think that's the issue. But I think if there was, like you said, if there was, hey guys, all right, we know, but I don't think we've ever had that. We've never, they've tried to.
I think the solutions we've tried
But it's
have been ones that the people said, okay, we'll try this, but that won't cause us any problem really,
because it's going to be painful for them to come and confess that, because one of the is when the drug addict or alcoholic, man, that's painful for them to admit.
Yeah.
Guys, I've hurt you. What I did selfishly, what I thought was right, I have hurt you.
Right.
And I'm sorry.
Yeah. That's right.
We have never. So I'm thinking just this. I think that's what the Black Lives Matter is saying.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I think the reason you and I are doing this is we don't say we have the solution, but can you think of an idea that maybe we could do? But if you're looking for one that is painless, I don't believe it exists.
No.
But what is the painful one we can do that will start to heal these wounds?
I think, like I said, that would, I think, if the leaders of our nation would make, they say, guys, you guys do matter. Y'all are important to us, and I think even though that's painful for them to humble, I guess, as the Lord says, to humble ourselves before Him. Yeah. If for them to humble themselves, and I keep saying them, our leaders. Man, I'm sorry about that. I see this. It's a brainwash kind of thing. It's them and us, but as the leaders of our nation would take that responsibility, and for us as Black Americans to be able to accept that and to move on.
And I think one of the problems with maybe in the past with not being able to accept it is it seems hollow. The attempts have seemed okay. We'll throw you a bone.
Yeah, here.
But it didn't. It hasn't seemed sincere. It hasn't seemed I'm willing to go through pain myself for you, and I think that's what's needed. So whether Oprah, if you've got some idea, you probably would, or anyone, what is the painful solution that maybe could start to heal this? And I think it would be worth going through the pain, and we would be blessed many times over for having done that.
Right, and I think that the Lord has kind of blessed us with this opportunity, dealing with the pandemic and all this stuff.
Yeah.
I think it's just brought all this to light, and given us an opportunity to have a conversation like this, to bring it out and open, to talk about, put it out there. Hey guys, what is the solution to bring healing?
After we get done with this one, Jimmy, and everything's great, then we can do Hispanic Lives Matter.
Yeah, we can.
Native American Lives Matter.
Right. So we can. Yeah. So we can.
Yeah.
Get it all worked out, man.
Yeah.
This is cool.
But let's together start talking about it, and not with violence, but we've got smart people who have way better ideas than I do, or maybe even than Jimmy does, but we got to quit looking for the painless solution and looking for the one that will work regardless of the pain. Yeah. So anything else you want to add?
No, I appreciate your heart, man, and for you guys out there for just being able to talk about this. It's tough. And, I've never been able to talk. I've never talked with anyone about this before. So I'm excited and, hope you guys take it to heart. Maybe, like I said, maybe we can come up with a good plan.
Well, I love you like a brother.
Too, brother.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
man.
you so much for doing this.
All right, man.
And thank you for watching. I know this was pretty long, but I felt like it was important that we cover as much as we could the whole thing, not just part of it. So thank you, and think about it yourself, pray about it, meditate about it, talk to your family, talk to your friends, talk about it to people at work. And I think there is no way possible that there's not a solution, but it's not going to be painless. Amen. So what's the painful solution? Have a great day.